Montana Territory. Autumn of 1881. The train hissed to a stop at Hollow Creek Station, its wheels grinding against iron rails like the groan of something dying. Steam curled into the cold air, thick and gray, swallowing the platform whole. A few passengers stepped down, collars pulled high, heads bowed against the wind. And then there was Lucy. She stood on the platform with a single carpetbag clutched in both hands, her coat too thin for the mountain cold, her boots scuffed from weeks of travel. Her breath came in short, visible clouds. Her eyes scanned the crowd once, twice, searching for a face she had only seen in a faded photograph. No one came. She waited as the other passengers scattered into waiting arms, into carriages, into lives that had been expecting them. The station emptied. The train pulled away with a long, mournful whistle, leaving her alone in the dust and wind. Lucy's fingers tightened around the handle of her bag. Her throat burned, but she refused to cry. Not here, not where someone might see. She had come all this way. Pennsylvania to Montana, 3 weeks on crowded trains, sleeping on benches, eating stale bread, all because a man named Gregory Hale had written her letters. Sweet letters, letters that promised a home, a future, a place where she could finally belong. But Gregory Hale was not here. The wind tugged at her skirt, and she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The fabric was worn thin in places, patched with thread that didn't quite match. It had been her mother's once before the fever took her. Before Lucy's father remarried and made it clear there was no room left for her in his new life. She had been unwanted then too. The thought stung more than the cold. She stood there until the cold began to bite through her sleeves. Then she turned and walked toward the only building still lit, a small general store at the edge of the platform. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. She stepped up to the counter where an old man with wire-rimmed glasses looked up from his ledger. "Excuse me," Lucy said softly. "I'm looking for Gregory Hale." The man's face shifted. Not with recognition, with pity. "Hale?" he repeated. "You mean the fella who ran the feed mill?" "Yes," Lucy said, hope rising in her chest. "Do you know where I can find him?" The old man set down his pen. Miss Gregory Hale left town 2 weeks ago, packed up in the night, owed half the county money. The words hit her like a fist. "Left?" she whispered. "Gone," the man said. "Didn't say where? Didn't say why?" Lucy's knees wobbled. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. Her vision blurred at the edges, and for a moment she thought she might fall. "Are you all right?" the man asked. She nodded, though she wasn't all right at all. The man leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now. "You one of them mail-order brides?" Lucy's cheeks flushed. She looked down. "I thought I was." He sighed, shaking his head. "You're the third girl this year." Hale wrote letters to half a dozen women, took their money for travel, then vanished before any of them arrived. Lucy's heart sank even further. She had sent him nearly everything she had. $15. It might as well have been a fortune. "I'm sorry, miss," the old man said. "Truly I am." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the world tilted. She had no money left, no ticket home, no family waiting for her. She had burned every bridge to get here, and now there was nothing but cold air and empty promises. "Is there a hotel?" she asked quietly. The man shook his head. "Boarding house closed last spring. Nearest place to stay is the Brooks Ranch, about 3 miles north. But they don't take in strangers." Lucy swallowed hard. "Thank you." She turned and walked back out into the cold. The sun was sinking fast, painting the sky in shades of rust and ash. The wind cut through her coat like a blade. She stood at the edge of the platform, staring out at the empty road, and for the first time in her life, Lucy Parker had no idea what to do next. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold but from something deeper. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. What would she do when night fell? Where would she sleep? How would she eat? The questions came faster than answers. That was when she heard the voice. "Miss." She turned. A little girl stood a few feet away, bundled in a wool coat far too big for her. Her blonde curls peeked out from beneath a knitted hat, and her blue eyes were wide with curiosity. "Are you lost?" the girl asked. Lucy's throat tightened. "I think I am." The girl tilted her head. "My papa says lost people need help." Before Lucy could respond, a man appeared behind the child. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a long coat dusted with road dirt, and his hat sat low over his brow. "Sarah," he said quietly. "Don't bother the lady." "She's not a bother," Lucy said quickly. The man's gaze shifted to her. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You waiting for someone?" he asked. Lucy hesitated. Then she shook her head. "Not anymore." He glanced at the empty platform, then back at her. "You got a place to stay?" "No." Silence stretched between them. The wind picked up, rattling the station sign overhead. The little girl tugged on the man's sleeve. "Papa, it's getting dark." He nodded slowly. Then he looked at Lucy again. "Name's Matthew Brooks," he said. "This is my daughter Sarah." "Lucy Parker," she replied. Matthew shifted his weight. "We've got a wagon, room for one more if you need it." Lucy blinked, caught off guard. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," he said simply. "But you will freeze if you stay out here." Sarah stepped forward and took Lucy's hand without hesitation. Her small fingers were warm, her grip sure. "Come with us," the girl said, smiling up at her. "We have soup." Lucy looked down at the child, then up at the man. She saw no cruelty in his face. No expectation, just quiet decency. She nodded. "Thank you." Matthew picked up her carpet bag without a word and led the way to the wagon. Sarah skipped beside Lucy, chattering about her doll and the chickens at home, and how her papa made the best cornbread in all of Montana. Lucy climbed into the back of the wagon, tucking her coat around her legs. The seat was hard, the air cold, but for the first time since the train had left her behind, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen. The wagon lurched forward, wheels creaking over frozen ground. Lucy held onto the side rail as they rolled past the station, past the general store, past the last flickering lamp of Hollow Creek. Ahead the road stretched dark and empty, but Matthew drove steady, and Sarah hummed a tuneless song beside him. Lucy pulled her shawl tighter and closed her eyes. She had been abandoned before, by her father, by Gregory Hale, by every promise that had ever been made to her. But tonight in the cold Montana dark, two strangers had stopped, and that was enough. As the wagon rolled away from the station, Lucy looked back once. The platform stood empty now, swallowed by shadow. The train was long gone. But ahead, through the gathering dark, a lantern swung gently from the wagon's hook, casting a small circle of light into the night. And Lucy held on. The Brooks Ranch sat tucked into a valley where the wind didn't bite quite as hard. A two-story house, weathered but solid, stood beside a barn and a small chicken coop. Smoke curled from the chimney and the windows glowed with warm lamplight. Lucy climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the cold. Sarah took her hand again, tugging her toward the house. "This is home," the girl said proudly. Matthew carried Lucy's bag inside without a word. The house smelled of wood smoke and something baking. The floors were swept clean and a fire crackled in the stone hearth. A rocking chair sat near the flames, a quilt draped over its arm. It was simple, but it was warm. "You can sleep in the spare room," Matthew said, setting her bag down by the stairs. "It's small, but it's dry." "Thank you," Lucy whispered. Sarah pulled on her father's sleeve. "Can she have soup, Papa?" Matthew nodded. "Go wash your hands." The girl scampered off, and Matthew turned to Lucy. "You hungry?" "I am," Lucy admitted. He gestured toward the table. "Sit." She did, her hands folded in her lap. Matthew ladled thick vegetable soup into a wooden bowl and set it in front of her. Steam rose from the surface, carrying the scent of onions and carrots and something earthy she couldn't name. Lucy ate slowly, savoring each bite. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until now. Sarah returned, scrubbed and smiling, and climbed into the chair beside her. "Do you like it?" "It's the best soup I've ever had," Lucy said honestly. The girl beamed. Matthew sat across from them, his own bowl untouched. He watched Lucy for a moment, then asked, "What happened at the station?" Lucy set down her spoon. "The man I came to marry, he left town 2 weeks ago." Matthew's jaw tightened. "Gregory Hale." She looked up, surprised. "You know him?" "Everyone knew him," Matthew said. "He owed money all over the county, borrowed from the bank, from neighbors, from anyone foolish enough to trust him." Lucy's chest ached. "He wrote me letters. He said he wanted a wife, a family." "He lied," Matthew said bluntly. The words stung, but they were true. Sarah leaned closer to Lucy. Are you going to stay with us? Lucy glanced at Matthew. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said. But you'll need to work. I can't afford charity. I can work, Lucy said quickly. I can cook, clean, mend clothes. I grew up on a farm. I know how to tend animals. Matthew studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, you can stay for now. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. That night, Lucy climbed the narrow stairs to the spare room. It was small, just as Matthew had said. A single bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the valley. But the blanket was clean, and the pillow smelled of lavender. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. She had come so close to losing everything, to freezing on that platform, to wandering into the dark with nowhere to go. But she was here now, safe, warm. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight she had a roof over her head. And that was more than she'd had this morning. The next day Lucy woke before dawn. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, and crept downstairs. The house was still dark, but she could hear movement in the kitchen. Matthew stood at the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal. He glanced up when she entered. You're up early, he said. I wanted to help, Lucy replied. He gestured toward the counter. Eggs need gathering. Coop's out back. Lucy nodded and pulled on her coat. Outside the air was sharp and cold, but the sky was beginning to lighten. She found the chicken coop easily and stepped inside. The hens clucked softly as she moved among them, collecting eggs in a basket. Her hands were cold, but she worked quickly, carefully. When she returned to the house, Matthew was setting the table. Sarah sat in her chair, yawning. Morning, the girl mumbled. Lucy smiled. Good morning. She set the basket on the counter and began cracking eggs into a bowl. Matthew didn't say anything, but she felt his eyes on her as she worked. Breakfast was quiet. Sarah ate her oatmeal with a spoon too big for her mouth, and Matthew drank his coffee in silence. Lucy helped herself to a small portion, not wanting to take more than her share. After the meal, Matthew pushed back from the table. I've got work in the barn. Sarah, you stay inside. Can Lucy come with me? The girl asked. Matthew hesitated, then nodded. If she wants. Lucy looked at Sarah's hopeful face. I'd like that. The morning passed in small, quiet tasks. Lucy swept the floors, washed the breakfast dishes, and mended a tear in one of Sarah's dresses. The girl followed her everywhere, chattering about her doll, her chickens, and how her mama used to braid her hair before bed. Lucy's hands stilled at that. Where's your mama? She asked gently. Sarah's smile faded. She's with the angels. Papa says she's watching over us. Lucy's chest tightened. I'm sorry. It's okay, Sarah said. Papa takes good care of me. Later that afternoon, Lucy stepped outside to hang laundry on the line. The wind tugged at the wet fabric and her fingers ached from the cold, but she worked steadily, pinning each piece in place. She didn't notice Matthew until he spoke. You don't have to do all this. She turned. He stood a few feet away, his hat in his hands. I want to earn my keep, Lucy said. You already have. She blinked, surprised. Matthew looked toward the house. Sarah hasn't smiled like that in a long time. Lucy followed his gaze. Through the window she could see the little girl playing with her doll, humming to herself. She's a sweet child, Lucy said softly. She is, Matthew agreed. Then he cleared his throat. I'll be in town tomorrow. Need supplies. You'll stay here with her. Lucy nodded. Of course. He put his hat back on and walked toward the barn without another word. That evening after supper, Sarah climbed into Lucy's lap while she sat by the fire. The girl's head rested against her shoulder and her breathing slowed. Lucy held her carefully, as if she might break. Matthew sat in the rocking chair across from them, whittling a piece of wood. He didn't look up, but his voice was quiet when he spoke. She likes you. Lucy glanced down at the sleeping child. I like her too. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when words aren't needed. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, the fire burned low. And for the first time in weeks, Lucy felt something she hadn't dared hope for. She felt like she might belong. By the end of the week, the townspeople had begun to talk. Lucy heard the whispers when she accompanied Matthew and Sarah to church on Sunday. Eyes followed her down the aisle. Women leaned close to one another, their voices low but pointed. That's the girl who came on the train. She's living with Matthew Brooks now. Alone. With a widower and his child. Scandalous. Lucy kept her head down and slid into the pew beside Sarah. Matthew sat on the other side of his daughter, his face unreadable. The preacher delivered his sermon, but Lucy barely heard a word. She could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on her from every direction. After the service, a woman with a sharp face and a tight bun approached them on the church steps. "Matthew," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I see you've taken in a guest." "Lucy's helping with the house," Matthew said evenly. The woman's eyes flicked to Lucy. "How charitable of you." Lucy forced a polite smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you." The woman didn't return the smile. "I'm sure it is." She swept away, her skirts rustling. Sarah tugged on Lucy's hand. "Don't listen to her. She's mean to everyone." Lucy squeezed the girl's hand. "It's all right?" But it wasn't. Not really. The whispers followed them all the way home. That night Lucy sat at the kitchen table, staring into her cup of tea. Matthew stood at the window, arms crossed. "They'll talk no matter what you do," he said quietly. "I know," Lucy replied, "but I don't want to cause trouble for you, or for Sarah." Matthew turned. "You're not causing trouble. They think, I don't care what they think." The sharpness in his voice surprised her. He stepped closer, his expression serious. "You're here because you needed help. That's all. And if the town has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." Lucy looked up at him, her throat tight.
"Thank you."
He nodded once, then turned back to the window. Outside, the stars blinked cold and distant. The days turned into weeks, and Lucy found her rhythm on the Brooks Ranch. She woke before dawn each morning, lit the stove and made breakfast while the house was still dark. By the time Matthew came in from feeding the horses, coffee was already brewing and biscuits were warming in the oven. He never said much, just nodded his thanks and ate in silence. But Lucy noticed the small things. The way he always left the biggest biscuit for her. The way he carried in extra firewood without being asked. The way he fixed the wobbly leg on her chair without mentioning it. Sarah, on the other hand, never stopped talking. She followed Lucy everywhere, chattering about everything and nothing. She helped gather eggs, though she often dropped them. She helped bake bread, though more flour ended up on her face than in the bowl. And every evening she climbed into Lucy's lap by the fire and asked for a story. Lucy told her tales she remembered from her own childhood. Stories about brave girls and clever foxes and magical forests. Sarah listened with wide eyes, her small hands clutching Lucy's sleeve. One night as Lucy tucked her into bed, Sarah looked up at her and whispered, "I wish you could stay forever." Lucy's throat tightened. "We'll see, sweetheart." "But I love you," Sarah said simply. The words struck Lucy like lightning. She blinked back tears and kissed the girl's forehead. "I love you too." Matthew was standing in the hallway when she stepped out of Sarah's room. Their eyes met in the dim light. He didn't say anything, but something passed between them, something quiet and unspoken. The next morning, Lucy went to the creek to wash clothes. The water was ice cold and her hands ached within minutes, but she scrubbed each piece carefully, humming a tune her mother used to sing. She didn't hear the footsteps until a voice spoke behind her. "Well, well, look who we have here." Lucy spun around. A man stood a few yards away, tall, dark-haired with a smirk that made her stomach twist. He wore a fine coat and polished boots, far too clean for ranch country. She recognized him immediately. "Gregory Hale." "Hello, Lucy," he said, stepping closer, "surprised to see me?" Her heart pounded. "You left. You disappeared." "I had business to attend to," he said smoothly. "But I'm back now." "You lied to me," Lucy said, her voice shaking. "You took my money. You left me stranded." Gregory shrugged. "A misunderstanding, but I'm here to make it right." He reached for her arm. Lucy jerked back. "Don't touch me." His smile faded. "You're my bride, Lucy. You came here for me." "I came here for a lie," she said. "I don't belong to you." His eyes darkened. "You don't have anywhere else to go." "Yes, I do." The voice came from behind Gregory, deep, steady, unmistakable. "Matthew." He stood at the edge of the clearing, rifle in hand. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold as stone. "She's not going anywhere with you," Matthew said. Gregory turned, his smirk returning. And who are you? Her new keeper. I'm the man telling you to leave. Gregory laughed. She's promised to me. I have her letters. Letters don't mean a damn thing when you abandoned her, Matthew said. He stepped forward, the rifle loose in his grip but ready. Now get off my land. For a moment Gregory hesitated. Then his jaw tightened. This isn't over, he said. He shot Lucy one last look, then turned and walked back toward the road. Lucy stood frozen, her hands trembling. Matthew lowered the rifle and walked to her side. You all right? He asked quietly. She nodded, though tears were sliding down her cheeks. He scared me. Matthew's hand rested gently on her shoulder. He won't come back. How do you know? Because I'll make sure of it. Lucy looked up at him, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. Protection, certainty, maybe even something more. That evening, Sarah insisted on sitting between them at supper. She chattered about the chicken that laid 2 eggs that day, about the story Lucy had told her, about how she wanted to learn to braid hair like Lucy did. Matthew listened quietly, occasionally nodding or offering a word, but his eyes kept drifting to Lucy. After Sarah went to bed, Lucy sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Matthew settled into the rocking chair across from her. Thank you, Lucy said. For today. You don't need to thank me. I do, she insisted. You didn't have to help me, but you did. Again. Matthew leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He was never going to marry you, Lucy. Men like him don't keep promises. I know that now. Silence stretched between them. Then Matthew spoke again, his voice quieter. My wife died 3 years ago. Fever took her in 2 days. Sarah was only 3. She doesn't remember much about her. Lucy looked at him, surprised he was sharing this. After that, Matthew continued, I didn't think I'd ever let anyone else into this house. Didn't see the point. But then you showed up at that station, and Sarah took to you like you'd always been here. He paused, his gaze steady on hers. Maybe that means something. Lucy's heart thudded in her chest. She didn't know what to say. Matthew stood and walked to the door. He paused there, his hand on the frame. You're not a guest anymore, Lucy. You're part of this place now, whether the town likes it or not. And then he was gone, leaving her alone by the fire. Lucy sat there for a long time, her hands folded in her lap, warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time since the train left her behind, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She was ready for it. The storm came without warning. Lucy woke to the sound of rain hammering against the roof. Thunder rolled across the valley like cannon fire, and lightning split the sky in jagged white lines. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs. Matthew was already in the kitchen, pulling on his coat. Horses are spooked, he said. I need to check the barn. I'll come with you, Lucy said. No, stay with Sarah. Before she could argue, he was gone, the door slamming behind him. Lucy stood at the window watching his lantern bob through the rain. The wind howled, bending the trees nearly double. She wrapped her arms around herself, uneasy. Behind her, small footsteps padded down the stairs. Lucy? Sarah's voice was trembling. I'm scared. Lucy turned and knelt, pulling the girl into her arms. It's just a storm, sweetheart. Your papa will be back soon. But an hour passed. Then 2. The rain didn't stop. The wind only grew louder. Lucy paced the kitchen, glancing out the window every few minutes. The lantern light from the barn had disappeared. Everything was dark. Where is he? Sarah whispered, clutching her doll. He's all right, Lucy said, though her own heart was racing. Finally she made a decision. Sarah, I need you to stay here. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or your papa. Understand? The girl's eyes went wide. You're going out there? I have to. Lucy pulled on Matthew's spare coat and grabbed the second lantern. She kissed Sarah's forehead. I'll be right back. The moment she stepped outside, the wind nearly knocked her down. Rain lashed her face. Cold and brutal, she held the lantern high and pushed forward. Matthew, she shouted, but the wind swallowed her voice. The barn loomed ahead, its doors swinging wildly. Lucy fought her way inside, gasping. The horses were frantic, kicking at their stalls, and in the corner, slumped against a post, was Matthew. Matthew! She rushed to him, dropping to her knees. His face was pale, his shirt soaked with rain and something darker, blood. "What happened?" she cried. He grimaced. Beam fell, caught my side. Lucy lifted his shirt carefully. A deep gash ran along his ribs, still bleeding. "We need to get you inside." "Can't walk," he muttered. "Then I'll help you." She tore a strip from her petticoat and pressed it against the wound. Matthew hissed through his teeth. "You shouldn't have come out here," he said. "And let you bleed to death," Lucy shot back. Despite the pain, a faint smile crossed his face. Lucy looped his arm over her shoulders and hauled him to his feet. They stumbled through the rain until they reached the house. Sarah flung open the door, her face streaked with tears. "Papa." "He's all right," Lucy said. "Help me get him to the chair." Together they eased Matthew into the rocking chair by the fire. Lucy peeled away his wet shirt and examined the wound. "I need hot water," she told Sarah. "And any cloth you can find." The girl ran to obey. Lucy worked quickly, washing the wound, stitching it with thread from her sewing kit. Matthew watched her through half-closed eyes. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked. "My father," Lucy said. "He got hurt a lot on the farm." Matthew grunted. "Lucky me." She tied off the last stitch and wrapped his ribs with clean linen. Then she sat back, exhausted. "You saved my life," Matthew said quietly. Lucy shook her head. "You saved mine first." Their eyes met and something shifted. Sarah crawled into her father's lap. "Careful not to touch his side. Don't ever do that again, Papa." "I'll try," he murmured. That night, after Sarah had finally fallen asleep, Lucy sat by the fire. Matthew lay on the couch, bandaged and pale but breathing steady. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you." "Can't. Hurts too much." Lucy rose and fetched a blanket, draping it over him. Her hand lingered on his shoulder. "You're stubborn," she said softly. "So are you." She smiled despite herself. Matthew caught her hand before she could pull away. "I meant what I said before," he murmured. "You're part of this place now, part of us." Lucy's throat tightened. "Matthew, I know it's not what you planned," he continued. "But maybe it's better." Her eyes stung with tears. "Maybe it is." He squeezed her hand once, then let go. Outside, the storm finally broke. The clouds parted, revealing a sky full of stars. The next morning, Lucy woke to the sound of hooves. She sat up, heart pounding. Through the window she saw riders approaching, 4 of them led by a man in a fine coat. Gregory Hale. Lucy's blood ran cold. She rushed to Matthew, who was trying to sit up. "Stay down," she said. "Like hell." But before either could move, the front door burst open. Gregory stood in the doorway, flanked by 3 men. His smile was cruel. "Hello, Lucy," he said. "Miss me?" Sarah screamed. Lucy stepped in front of her. "Get out," Lucy said, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't think so." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This here's a contract, signed by you, promising yourself to me." "That contract is worthless," Matthew said from the couch. Gregory's eyes flicked to him. "Law says otherwise." "She's mine." "No," Lucy said. "I'm not." Gregory nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward and grabbed Lucy's arm. She struggled, but his grip was iron. "Let her go," Sarah cried. And then Matthew was on his feet. He moved fast, grabbing the rifle from above the mantel. The click of the hammer echoed through the room. "I said," Matthew growled, "get your hands off her." The man released Lucy and stepped back. Gregory's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Brooks." "The only mistake," Matthew said, "was you coming back." For a long moment no one moved. Then Gregory laughed, cold and bitter. "Keep her. She's not worth the trouble." He turned and walked out, his men following. The door slammed shut. Lucy collapsed into a chair, shaking. Matthew lowered the rifle, wincing. Sarah ran to Lucy, burying her face in her lap. "It's over," Lucy whispered. "It's over." Matthew limped to the window and watched until the riders disappeared. Then he turned back to Lucy. "He won't come back," Matthew said. Lucy looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Not anymore." And in that moment Lucy knew. She wasn't just staying because she had nowhere else to go. She was staying because this was home. Spring came slowly to Montana, melting the snow and painting the valley green. Lucy stood on the porch watching Sarah chase chickens across the yard. The girl's laughter rang out like bells, bright and pure. Matthew stepped up beside her, his hand brushing hers. "She's happy," he said quietly. "She is," Lucy agreed. He turned to face her. His eyes were steady, searching. "And you?" Lucy looked up at him. "I am, more than I've ever been." Matthew nodded slowly. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A ring, simple silver worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's," he said. "She gave it to my wife when we married, and now," he paused, "I'd like you to have it." Lucy's breath caught. "Matthew, I'm not good with words," he continued. "But I know what I feel. You came here with nothing, no home, no family, and somehow you gave me both back." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want you to stay because you have nowhere else to go," Matthew said. "I want you to stay because this is where you belong. With us. With me." Lucy's hand trembled as she reached for the ring. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." He slipped it onto her finger, and she threw her arms around his neck. He held her tight, his face buried in her hair. Sarah came running up the steps. "Are you crying, Lucy?" Lucy laughed through her tears. "Happy tears, sweetheart." The girl looked between them, her eyes widening. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" "Forever," Lucy said. Sarah let out a whoop of joy and flung herself at them both. They stood there together, wrapped in each other's arms, as the sun climbed higher in the sky. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet preparation. Lucy sewed her wedding dress by lamplight, her fingers moving carefully over the white fabric. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Sarah helped pick wildflowers from the meadow, gathering them in baskets and arranging them on the kitchen table. She talked endlessly about the wedding, about how Lucy would be her real mama now, about how they'd all be a family. Matthew cleaned up the yard, mended the fence, and even whitewashed the porch. He didn't say much, but Lucy caught him watching her sometimes with a softness in his eyes that made her heart swell. One evening as they sat by the fire, Sarah asked, "Will you change your name?" Lucy smiled. "Yes, I'll be Lucy Brooks." "Lucy Brooks," Sarah repeated, testing it out. "I like it." Matthew reached over and squeezed Lucy's hand. The wedding was small, just the three of them and the preacher from town. They stood beneath the cottonwood tree behind the house, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Lucy wore her simple white dress, sewn by her own hands. Sarah stood beside her, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers, her face glowing with pride. Matthew wore his cleanest shirt, his hair combed back, his hands steady as he reached for Lucy's. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through hardship and joy. Matthew spoke his vows in a low, steady voice. "I promise to stand by you, to protect you, to love you for as long as I live." Lucy's voice shook, but her words were clear. "I promise to stay, to care for you and Sarah, to love you both with everything I have." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife. Matthew kissed her softly, and Sarah cheered. Afterward, they sat on the porch and ate cake. Lucy had baked that morning. Sarah talked non-stop about how beautiful the ceremony was, how Lucy looked like a princess, how she wanted a wedding just like that someday. Matthew and Lucy exchanged smiles over the girl's head. The town had come around too. Slowly, quietly. But they had. The whispers stopped. The cold stares softened. People nodded to Lucy at church now, and some even smiled. One woman, the baker's wife, stopped her after the service one Sunday. "I was wrong about you," she said simply. "I'm sorry." Lucy didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. "You're good for them," the woman continued. "Matthew and Sarah, anyone can see that." "Thank you," Lucy whispered. When the sun began to set on their wedding day, Sarah finally yawned and climbed into Lucy's lap. "Tell me a story," she mumbled. Lucy stroked her hair. "Once upon a time there was a girl who got lost. She didn't know where she was going or what would happen to her. But then she found a little girl and her father, and they became a family." "Did they live happily ever after?" Sarah asked sleepily. Lucy looked at Matthew. He was watching her with soft eyes. "Yes," Lucy said. "They did." Sarah smiled and closed her eyes. That night, after tucking Sarah into bed, Lucy and Matthew stood on the porch together. The stars were bright overhead, and the air was cool and sweet. I never thought I'd have this again, Matthew said quietly. A family, a home that feels alive. Lucy leaned against him. Neither did I. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Thank you for getting off that train. She laughed softly. Thank you for stopping. They stood there in comfortable silence watching the night settle over the valley. Inside, Sarah slept soundly, her doll tucked under one arm. Outside, two people who had been lost found each other. And somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed across the plains, carrying other travelers toward their own uncertain futures. But here on the Brooks Ranch, the journey was over. Lucy Parker Brooks had finally come home.